Welcome to session 6. In the previous sessions, we went through our discipleship process, come, grow, serve, lead. Now let's discuss what is a care group. And I want to begin by reading a verse from Matthew 5, verses 1 to 2. It says, "Now when Jesus saw the crowds, he went up on a mountainside and sat down. His disciples came to him, and he began to teach them." What we see throughout the Gospels is that Jesus made disciples in small groups. Now, he also ministered to individuals when the need arose. Small group discipleship versus one-on-one discipleship is not either or, but both and. You see, Jesus did both. Rather than discipling 12 men individually and independently of each other, Jesus built relationships among his disciples. When one needed private ministry, Jesus ministered to that man privately. But most of their discipleship was a group project. It was not enough for disciples to relate to Jesus. They needed to relate to one another. Just like Jesus, we must learn to minister to the 12 and to the one, to the group and to the individual. And so I want to lay out two principles that we can glean from Jesus' example. Number one, disciples are best made in small groups. And number two, healthy small groups employ a fourfold process of discipleship, which is come, grow, serve, and lead. Let's discuss small group ministry as it's displayed in the Old Testament. So we're going to read Exodus 18, verses 14 to 19. This is talking about Moses. When his father-in-law saw all that Moses was doing for the people, he said, "What is this you are doing for the people? Why do you alone sit as judge while all these people stand around you from morning till evening?" Moses answered him, "Because the people come to me to seek God's will. Whenever they have a dispute, it is brought to me, and I decide between the parties and inform them of God's decrees and instructions." Moses' father-in-law replied, "What you are doing is not good. You and these people who come to you will only wear yourselves out. The work is too heavy for you. You cannot handle it alone. Listen now to me, and I will give you some advice, and may God be with you. You must be the people's representative before God and bring their disputes to him." Moses, you see, had more pastoral responsibility than any mere mortal could possibly handle. And the reason is that because, like many pastors today, he tried to do it all by himself. And the results of this one-man show leadership style were predictably disastrous. Moses was burning out and the people's needs were not met. Jethro saw past the impressive numbers game and gave Moses some very sound advice. He said in verse 20, "Teach them his decrees and instructions and show them the way they are to live and how they are to behave. But select capable men from all the people, men who fear God, trustworthy men who hate dishonest gain, and appoint them as officials over thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. Have them serve as judges for the people at all times, but have them bring every difficult case to you. The simple cases they can decide themselves. That will make your load lighter, because they will share it with you. If you do this and God so commands, you will be able to stand the strain, and all these people will go home satisfied." So after listening to Jethro's advice, Moses knew things had to change. He had two options. He could try to do it all on his own, or he could organize the people into smaller groups, equipping and empowering them to minister. And Moses thankfully chose the second option. We see in Exodus 18, verse 24 to 26, Moses listened to his father-in-law and did everything he said. He chose capable men from all Israel and made them leaders of all the people, officials over thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. They served as judges for the people at all times. The difficult cases they brought to Moses, but the simple ones they decided themselves. So that is a great affirmation of the validity of small group ministry in the Old Testament. But now let's look at the New Testament church. What we see is that the early church in the book of Acts met both in homes or small groups and in the temple, also worship services. In order to be a strong, healthy church, we must have small group ministry and corporate worship services. Let's read a few examples from Acts, the book of Acts. Acts 2, verse 46. It says, "Every day they continued to meet together in the temple courts. They broke bread in their homes and ate together with glad and sincere hearts." Acts 5, verse 42. "Day after day in the temple courts and from house to house, they never stopped teaching and proclaiming the good news that Jesus is the Messiah." Acts 8:3. "But Saul began to destroy the church, going from house to house. He dragged off both men and women and put them in prison." In Acts 20, verse 20. "You know that I have not hesitated to preach anything that would be helpful to you, but have taught you publicly and from house to house." And so the small group, there's a difference between small groups and worship services. They're not the same. See, small group has a different purpose and meets a different need than larger worship gatherings. Certain spiritual needs can only be met in a small group, while others are better met in a large gathering. So, what is accomplished in an IFGF worship service? Primarily two things: worship and preaching. And let's ask, okay, what is accomplished then in an IFGF Care Group? Two things that are different, and it's primarily fellowship and discipleship. So in large worship gatherings, we have worship and preaching, and in small groups, we have fellowship and discipleship. Now, let's talk briefly about what is a healthy care group. Care group is, first of all, the primary venue for discipleship in our church. And so right from the start, we have to acknowledge that there are many ideas about what a church discipleship program or small group ministry should look like. So to help us understand what an IFGF care group is, we need to understand first what it is not. So I hope you're ready for a long list of what a care group is not. A care group is not a need-focused group where each person comes to talk about problems and receive personal pastoral care. Next, a care group is not leader-centered. It's not a leader-centered Bible study where each person comes to listen to and learn from some Bible expert. A care group is not fellowship-based. It's not a fellowship-based social time where each person comes to meet Christian friends. A care group is not a spiritual gift experiment where people can try out spiritual gifts on each other. A care group is not an accountability group where everyone goes through a spiritual checklist. A care group is not a home group where food is served and whole families gather for fellowship. A care group is not a mini church service complete with worship, offerings, and preaching. So what is a care group then? You see, although people in a healthy care group may meet needs, they will study the Bible, they will fellowship with each other. These are not the primary purpose of a care group. And the primary purpose is to make disciples. So, what is a care group meeting? A care group meeting lasts from 60 to 90 minutes every week to help one another follow Jesus, fish for people, and fellowship with other disciples. So, a care group gathering is all about discipleship. Now, let's break this down. Discipleship ministry. Okay, what's the difference then between discipleship ministry and a care group? Discipleship ministry is 24/7. It happens as we go about our daily lives. Care group is one day a week. Discipleship ministry, it doesn't end where a care group is 60 to 90 minutes. Discipleship ministry is anywhere at any time, but a care group is a specific place and time. The care group meeting is just a part of the overall discipleship ministry in the life of the church. For a care group to truly be healthy and successful, one thing that has to happen is that relationships must extend beyond the meeting. Okay, so few principles here before we wrap things up. A care group meeting happens once each week. Okay, and like I said, discipleship ministry happens 7 days a week. A care group meeting lasts from 60 to 90 minutes at a prescribed time and place. Discipleship ministry can take place anywhere, anytime, as I mentioned. And while it is important to learn to properly lead a care group meeting, it is important to learn to minister to people. So, what's a summary for all of this? A care group is more than just another meeting. It is an integral part of the overall discipleship and leadership strategy of IFGF. It involves the organization of the local church into small, growing groups. It requires the pastors to equip and empower believers to make disciples. In a church that values both corporate worship and small groups, small group ministry is the primary place for inviting people to come, grow, serve, and lead.